There was always this insuppressible adamance in me about independence. So much so that after having moved into a new city, I took up accommodation on my own. Living alone is far tougher than it seems, and take my word for it. Overworking myself seemed to be a plausible option to fetch sleep easily. But it was nevertheless a privilege I couldn't afford every day, and nights simply didn't pass. There's this pretty big playground, a few steps from my apartment, where night volley, football, and badminton was pretty regular. A few more steps from the left corner of the field, and you enter a place that is devoid of all the cacophony of city life. Well, there's a small water body of sorts with fish abounding in it right inside the compound. Skip to the other entrance of the compound, and there are these tea stalls, two to be exact, with the usual lot of lazy men loitering around and a certain clamor. I was very calculative to go to both the shops alternatively, so as to maintain a certain goodwill, which is essentially necessary. I'll come to that part later. Interesting is the fact that one of the shop owners heard me argue with the Amazon customer care executive over the phone on a certain day. Next thing, he proposes to me the prospect of me helping him with his spoken English. He was a remarkably fast learner and picked up well on these apps, which translated Bengali to English in real time. While I got my previously contracted free cups of tea. Oh, and as for his life, it was far more eventful than the timeline of cliche bestsellers. Dadu. Dadu always had a perspective which was in contrast to the usual norms. He helped me brave the very fearful notion of death and the associated rituals that we all have to a certain degree. He keeps insisting that one should idealistically visit a crematorium at least once before they actually die. And oh yes, he does cut that philosophy of "Tu nanga hi to aaya tha, kya ghanta lekar jayega" very short. What he essentially instilled in me was acceptance of the fact that man is mortal. As a youngster, it didn't make much sense to me as to the fact, why would a crematorium of all places help me find peace amongst my demons? Of course, the compound I was talking about all this while is essentially a crematorium. But before your spooky premonitions even creep in, let me just emphasize on the fact that Korea Moha Shoshan is unlike all of those places you have ever visualized as a perfect confluence between Dharti Lok, Patal Lok and Swarg Lok. It is essentially a pretty big compound with 2 temples, an air-conditioned waiting hall, electric furnaces housed in a blue and white building, and an out-of-use paved area, which I suppose still offers the option of getting cremated in a wooden pyre. But my memories of that paved area is strictly limited to all those Amavasya nights when khichdi was served fondly to any onlookers as bhog for the Mahakali Puja and constituted dinners for bachelors like me. I never quite minded the incoming hears as much because Mora dekhle jatra shubho hai. More like you succeed in whatever you're going out to do if you see a dead body. Bodies. They came in all forms of sizes, shapes, and recognizability and entourages. some of them even putting the convoy of Modi ji to shame. For those who don't know, Shoshan Bondhu, that means the people trailing the hearsay always have some sort of refreshments after having reached the crematorium. Tea, cigarettes, cold drinks, cakes, biscuits, bottled water, anything. And another predictable pattern is not all of them pay for the things they buy. There is always this one person who keeps accounts and clears dues before leaving. Okay, now don't judge me as I tell you that I awaited opportunities like these where I could freeload a cup of tea and a cigarette and shift the accounts to the already deceased. Yeah, perverted pleasure or whatever you might call that. And this is where maintaining familiarity with both the shop owners proved heavily beneficial. With them knowing the meaning of my grin or a wink and moving my tabs on theirs. Trust me, I prayed and offered condolences too for the dead man, just to keep the scales balanced. It was just another fine evening when I finished one of my freeloaded rounds of cha cigarette. I had figured out by then that it was a young man dead this time who sponsored it. On further inspection, I learned that he was due to be married in a week and had seen some 24 springs. Death is inevitable. But the fact he was young and healthy and some drunk truck driver ran over him pained me somewhat. With thoughts of the innumerable probabilities that the death of this man has rendered impossible, I was slowly walking back home. I was sort of stirred from my thread of thoughts when this lady who was visibly shaken caught me by my arms and started shaking me in turn. She kept howling how her Babu wasn't dead because there was no way he could be dead, as she was holding Babu with her own hands. I was dazed, but not so much as to not understand what was happening. It was not her usual self, but a paranoia speaking which was triggered from the immense grief of the unacceptable twist of tales. Her Babu, who was supposed to be taking rounds around the holy fire in a week, was now going inside the very holy flames that will render his existence as void. Few men and women had immediately gathered round, trying to shout some sense into her head and thoroughly apologizing to me all the while for her apparent demeanor. I couldn't make them understand that I understood what this lady was going through, that it was fine and I didn't quite mind. I stayed put with her. All the time her Babu was being charred to the bone by some 1,000 volts, listening to her say, "Eat to Amar Babu," and patting my head. Babu's fiancée was sitting right next to her. But before being introduced, I was pretty sure she was a beautiful stone portrait of some sort carved by some maestro. The lady refused to let go of a grasp of me, even after the entire process of cremation was finished. She loosened up only after she saw an earthen pot full of ash. Both her grasp and her control on her tears. I never quite remember being at such a loss of words as on that particular evening. Home they brought her warrior dead never seemed more real. Coming back home, I entered the shower fully clothed, trying to reconstruct the rather sudden events in my otherwise monotonous timeline. And goodness, I was spared from Ma's shouting because even tap water in Kolkata is Ganga Jal. The family did invite me to the cards and Shraddho. You know, the essential last rites of the deceased. They even WhatsApped me an invitation and the location and the date of the function. Nobody knows about the occurrence of this event in my life until now. Not that I care, because I have moved houses anyway. Baba was mostly apprehensive about the alarming closeness of my previous apartment to the Shoshan. I took out a white t-shirt and picked up a wreath of flowers and a few sticks of Rajnikandha on the way. Yeah, I did attend the last rites of Mrs. Chatterjee's Babu. I put the flowers in front of a huge framed portrait of a very handsome man in his early 20s. You know, whatever they might say, the dead is always ugly. And even more with a smashed head. I remember not having taken lunch because I was probably not hungry. I met the lady and greeted her. I could see embarrassment on her face, but gave her no opportunity to even mention anything. I said, ছোট মুখে বলছি, আজ আপনার বাবু নেই, অন্যদিকে হয়তো অনেকের মা নেই, তাদেরকে দেখবেন. Which literally translates to, just like you do not have a son today anymore, a lot of people do not have their mothers. The equation is simple. By the way, I still freeload my share of chai sutta every time I get an opportunity until this corona scare happened.